Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Your Neuropathy Experience Can Move Research Forward. I'm Tina Takraszewski, President and CEO of the Neuropathy Association, and with me this afternoon is Catherine Greger, Project Manager for ResearchMatch, as well as Dr. Tom Brannigan, who is Co-Director of the Neuropathy Association's Center of Excellence at Columbia University. This is a unique opportunity. We're glad to have you with us today to hear this webinar. But first, a little housekeeping. Remember that due to a large number of people participating, we will answer questions at the end of the webinar. And in terms of following the instructions on the screen, you can begin submitting questions at any time. And we will share the slides and the recorded webinar at a later date. Be sure to visit www.neuropathy.org for copies of the slides in the future. No phone or microphone is necessary for this webinar, but you do need speakers for audio. We're happy to have you here with us, and so I will pass it over to our panelists this afternoon. And again, thank you so much for joining us. It's an exciting opportunity for neuropathy patients to get involved with clinical trials. It opens up a broad spectrum of opportunities to participate in clinical trials that you may or may not otherwise be able to learn about. And our panelists today will talk to the state of clinical trials in the neuropathy field, as well as the opportunities that ResearchMatch presents. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name's Tom Brannigan, and for the first part of this session, we'll just be talking about some issues
Dr.
involved.
Brannigan, I turn the microphone over to you.
Well, good afternoon. Hi, this is Tom Brannigan, and I'm going to be spending the first part of this talk talking about what's involved in being in a clinical trial, and then we'll talk more about ResearchMatch. And next slide. So first, I'd like to talk about just what a clinical trial is. A clinical trial is a carefully designed study to answer an important medical question. Clinical research trials are conducted to collect information on people like you that volunteer to receive experimental therapies over a period of time under the close supervision of physicians and research professionals. Clinical research trials are conducted in a careful step-by-step process and can determine if one treatment is better than another. Experimental therapies tested during clinical trials can take the form of a new drug, treatment, or device. So next slide. So the purpose of a clinical trial is to determine if the treatment is helpful, if it works, and also is it safe. Next slide. So you may have heard of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, and I'm just going to take a moment to discuss what these involve. A phase 1 trial is the first use of a new drug in people, and in a phase 1 study, the new experimental therapy is tested in a small, healthy group of people for safety and side effects. The next stage of development of a new treatment are phase 2 studies. So a phase 2 trial is set up to look at the safety and effectiveness of a new experimental therapy. In a phase 2 trial, the new experimental therapy is tested in a group of people who have the disease or condition for which the experimental therapy was developed. And then the final phase of clinical trials that is done before medications are brought to regulatory approval, such as the FDA approval in the United States, is a phase 3 study. So these are set up to look at the new experimental therapy versus standard therapy or care. A phase 3 trial will enroll a large number of people who have the disease or condition for which the experimental therapy was developed. There is also what is called phase 4 studies. These typically occur after a medication is FDA approved, and they may be done to continue to study safety and efficacy, and also to determine the best use of the medicine. Next slide. So I'd like to next speak briefly about what a study protocol is. A study protocol describes the scientific rationale, objectives, design, methodology, and statistical considerations and organization of the planned trial. The protocol contains a precise study plan to assure safety and the health of the trial subjects and to provide an exact template for trial conduct by investigators. And another process that you may hear about is screening. So what does screening mean? Screening, when patients are screened, it is determined whether you are eligible to participate in the clinical trial that you have been identified for. So criteria for participation may include any of the following: age, gender, race, diagnosis, the type and stage of the disease, previous treatment history, and other medical conditions. And any of these criteria may be used to include or exclude a participant. Next slide. So the next item I'd like to discuss is what is informed consent. So prior to participation, before any study procedure is done, volunteers will be asked to sign an informed consent document and a HIPAA or a privacy document. Volunteers will be given detailed instructions that explain the clinical trial. These instructions are referred to as a protocol. A protocol outlines how the clinical research trial will be conducted, including tests and treatments involved. Before any study procedures are done, informed consent is obtained. The subject is able to read the consent form. The consent form is reviewed and explained. Questions are answered. The consent form is signed. The subject should get a copy of the consent form. And also informed consent is an ongoing process while the study is proceeding as well. Next slide. So what is a consent form? The consent form explains the study, explains the risks, explains the potential benefit to the patient or subject entering, and also who to contact for more information. It is not a contract, and volunteers are free to withdraw from the study completely or to refuse particular treatments or tests at any time. Sometimes, however, this will make them ineligible to continue in the study. So most clinical trials are double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trials. So what does this mean? Double-blind means that neither the research subject or the researcher knows whether the subject is on the active drug or the placebo. And this is set up in this way to attempt to remove bias from both the researcher and the study subject in reporting how they are responding. It's randomized means that two or more alternative treatments are assigned by chance, also to avoid bias. And placebo-controlled means participants may be assigned to an inactive product that resembles the study drug. So these are a couple current studies that are currently enrolling people with neuropathy for new treatments. There is a clinical trial sponsored by the company Alnylam with a drug that has letters and numbers for the treatment of transthyretin familial amyloid polyneuropathy, which is an inherited neuropathy, and also a study for the same disease, but with a different drug, ISIS-TTRx. There's also currently a clinical trial enrolling new patients for fingolimod as a oral therapy for patients who have chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, or CIDP. And there's also a clinical trial currently enrolling new patients for subcutaneous immunoglobulin as a treatment for chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, or CIDP. So these are some clinical trials that some patients may be eligible, and there are of course, inclusion and exclusion criteria that some patients may be eligible for these trials. Next slide. So currently, the process from the start of basic research to developing new drugs, treatments, or cures takes about 17 to 20 years, starting from the basic laboratory research, testing the drug for safety, and then going through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies to the time that the medication is available for use in patients. So, for example, if a new idea was developed this year, it on average would take till 2034 for the medication to be available for patients. So I think everybody in the field believes that it would be good to speed this process up, and we're going to be talking about one way that we can hopefully help match patients to available clinical trials that could help this process. So I'll turn the session over now. Thank you.
Hi everybody, this is Catherine Greger. I'm the project manager for a group called ResearchMatch.org. We are proud to partner with the Neuropathy Association on an endeavor to try and help speed up this timeline. So 20 years, that sounds like a long time, right? So you're like, you want to know how we can make this go faster. How can we cut it down from 2034, before a drug is available, to say maybe, what if we could do it in 5 years? So that's to say that a researcher today at a bench somewhere in a lab can find a chemical, can put it through trials, and we can actually get it into patients' hands in 5 years. I mean, that's still a long time, but it's not quite as long as what we're currently dealing with. So the question is, how? How do we do this? Well, the answer is we can do it together. So often patients are told that they don't have access to clinical trials, or they say they don't feel that they have access. Stats show us that 80% of total trials are delayed at least 1 month or more because of unfulfilled enrollment. That means that they can't get the volunteers that they need into their clinical trials to meet a certain level of enrollment that the FDA has set in order to make sure that they find this statistically safe or statistically significant in order to move forward to drug approval. Another stat, 6% of clinical trials are completed on time. 6%. Out of all the millions of dollars we spend on clinical research, only 6% make it on time. That means that 72% of trials run over schedule by more than a month. And I don't know if you've ever heard the stat of how long, how much it costs each day a drug is late to market, but it's about $1 million a day. That's a lot of money. 50% of clinical research sites enroll 1 or no patients in their studies at all. They just can't find patients. They can't find volunteers. And each day, sponsors lose up to $8 million. The numbers jumped. Each drug is delayed to market. So it's not just about sponsors losing money. It's about patients losing access. You guys are waiting that extra day to get the drug that can make a difference for you living day to day with the disease that or your condition that you're currently struggling with. So Neuropathy Association and ResearchMatch feel that together we can change this. When you ask most patients why or would they like to participate in a clinical study, a lot of them say, yeah, I'd love to. And here's some of the reasons why. And the biggest reason why is that they're looking for access to researchers and healthcare providers. They're looking for access to thought leaders, people who are out on the cutting edge of science, who are going to help them with their disease. They're vested. They have something that they want to do, and you guys together can make this work. So then, if everybody says they want to participate, why aren't they? So it comes down again to the question of access. I don't know if clinical trials apply to me. I'm not able to travel to access the clinical study location because I feel that the study is only done in major academic medical centers, and I don't live anywhere near one. I don't have access to information. Nobody even asked me about whether or not I want to be in a clinical trial. Access. It all comes down to access. So you may be asking yourself right now, how do I get access? Well, the answer is at your fingertips. Neuropathy Association and ResearchMatch.org are partnered, so all you need to do is go to www.researchmatch.org and take a look. This is what you'll see. This is our website. So you're saying, who is this ResearchMatch.org? What are they about? Well, We are a free and secure registry developed by major academic research institutions across the country with the mission of helping today's research studies make a difference in everyone's health sooner. We're a new way to address the problem of research studies ending too soon because of a lack of volunteers. We're sponsored by the NIH National Center for Advancement of Translational Sciences, which means that we are nonprofit, we are not partnered in any way with a pharmaceutical company, and we're unbiased. We are disease neutral, we're institution neutral, and we are funding neutral. So that means that we really are trying to focus on the volunteer and not so much on the big dollar signs and the sponsors and the pharma. We really want to make this connection work because making those connections is the best way to speed up development. So what do you have to do? Well, it's a 4-step process. It's pretty easy. All you have to do as a volunteer is go to our website, click on Get Started, and you'll be asked to fill out a little bit of a survey. It takes approximately 5 to 10 minutes depending on how much information you want to enter. The first page is contact details, so that's just creating an account. You have to do that. The second page is demographics. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your age, your height, your weight, are you male, female, ethnicity. And then these 2 pages are the only 2 pages that are actually required. The next page I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead of myself. So this is the Get Started button. You're going to start there. You're going to click on Next. When you see this, that you're registering for yourself, we do ask that you be 19 years or older, and that is because we are monitored by an IRB, which some of you may know is an institutional review board, and they are a committee that is independent and responsible for ensuring patient safety. And they've asked us to go to 19 years and older as the age of consent. So you have to verify your age of 19, but then you can move forward. You'll get this volunteer agreement, and this is basically the terms of use. It tells you how we'll use your information, who has access to it, and how we keep it secure. And I'll talk a little bit more about access and security as we get a little further down here. And then here's the first page I was telling you about where you set up your account. So pretty simple, basic information. Demographics, again, basic information. And again, these first 2 pages are the only 2 pages that are actually required for information. This next page, the conditions page, is where you get to tell us a little bit about what you're looking for. What conditions are affecting your life and what conditions are you hoping to know more about. And you can enter as little or as much information here as you want. And so you begin to type in the condition. So we're going to type in neuropathy. And as you can see from the screen, the drop-down menu will automatically start to filter. And you can just go ahead and scroll down and click on neuropathy and add that to your profile. You can also add any other conditions that you've got going on. Maybe you're a little hypertensive, maybe you have celiac. Go ahead and add those in. Then, this is where the Neuropathy Partnership comes in. We've created a list of 8 questions that are intended to help get us a little bit closer to that match. So, as many of you know, neuropathy is not just a singular disease. There's lots of different types of what they call comorbidities. Meaning that you have other symptoms. There's a lot of different types of pain, a lot of different types of way the condition affects people's bodies. So what we've developed here with collaboration from the Neuropathy Association and also volunteers like yourselves are a list of questions that we feel will help narrow down that search a little bit faster. Some may call these pre-screening questions, meaning they're helping filter out. They are optional. You don't have to answer them. We encourage you to, but again, we're here for you, so we're only going to ask you to do what you're comfortable with. After that, you're going to get your medications list. This, you can tell us about any medications you're on, any over-the-counter, any prescription. You don't have to fill this out if you don't like it. Say you have a long list of medications, you don't have time for that right now, you can skip it. You can always come back and change it later. No big deal. Then we'll ask you some additional information about whether or not you had any trouble using the system. Are you willing to travel a certain distance, or are you looking for something a little bit closer? And then any comments you want to share, you can freeform enter those as well. Lastly, you'll be shown a confirmation page, which will show you basically a receipt of everything you just entered, and then your login and information. And lastly, you'll be taken to your volunteer dashboard. A volunteer dashboard is where your place to come to see where you are in your community in terms of people who are like you in the system. It's also a place where you can come in to help others get connected by referring a friend. It's a place where you can share ideas. We ask for information that you want to share about either an organization that you've worked with that's great and somebody you think we should talk to, about a problem with your condition that you feel isn't addressed in typical science, or a question you want to ask. Why do I feel this way? And these are really just for idea generation, so it's not that you're going to get an automatic response, but somebody may come in and search this information and see it and go, hey, that is a great question. Maybe we should design a study around that. So that's the purpose of this idea form. If you want to come in and update or change your profile at any time, you can just go up to your dashboard. You're going to click in the left-hand corner on your profile, and it'll take you to this page that you see before you right now. You can edit your information, you can remove yourself from the registry, and you can also add some family member or a dependent. So I have my child registered. You can help your mother or your father register if they're not computer savvy and they're interested, or you can just add your spouse. Same thing. A couple other features that we like to talk about is the tell a friend. We want you to be so excited about the partnerships and the matches that you get in ResearchMatch that you want to tell others about it. So we've provided a way for you to do that. We've also given you a volunteer FAQ. So this was answering some of the most common questions that come up when you're looking at the website. This is available whether you register or not. But we put it here on your dashboard because this is the place we want you to come to as your main resources if you become a member. Otherwise, you can still access this on the outward-facing page if you want to know this information in advance of signing up. You can also change your password by clicking on Change Your Password. So this is all about how to register, right? So you guys are still wondering, well, what does this do? So ResearchMatch, we ask you to enter this information because then we want to help researchers find you based on the information you enter. So we're going to have your profile in the system, and then researchers are going to try and connect. And the way they try to connect is they're going to search our system based on a couple of different factors. It could be geography, it could be conditions, it could be demographics, and they're going to narrow down to a pool of patients that they think meet their criteria for their study. It's important for us to emphasize that all of this criteria or all this information is de-identified. So just because you're in the system and you have a profile and somebody's searching it, they don't see your name, they don't see your address, they don't see your phone number, they don't see any identified information until we get to a little bit further down the road in which you opt in to let them see that. So right now, researchers just narrow down to a pool and they say, hey, there's 58 patients in this system that I think would be a great fit for my study. I want to contact them. So they're going to send you what we call a contact message. And a contact message is just an email. You're going to get an email from info@researchmatch.org. It's going to say something to the effect of a researcher at Vanderbilt University or a researcher at Columbia or a researcher at Norton Healthcare. We're also outside in community centers. Is interested in talking to you about a study involving neuropathy. They're looking for patients who fit this criteria. And you're going to read through it, and at the bottom, you're going to get a little set of buttons that say yes and no. So, are you interested in hearing more about this? Click yes. If you're interested, click yes. If you say, hey, this isn't for me, I feel like I'm not really here, or I don't have time for this, click no. If you click no, your information drops off, you go away, researcher never gets to contact you. If you say yes, we release your name and your contact information to the research team, and they will contact you directly, usually via email, and say, hey, thanks for your interest in the study. We'd like to talk to you some more. Can you come in? We have a little meeting. We can go through some questions. We can sign that consent form that Dr. Brannigan so eloquently explained, and then we can go ahead and get on down the road. And the thought behind this is that the way all of this matching happens in the real world right now is pretty much by luck a lot of times for physicians and researchers out there in the community, and for patients too. So are you in the right place? Does your doctor know about this clinical trial? Do they know somebody who's doing the trial? Is the trial even near you? All of these questions are up to luck unless you have something to help you answer them and put all of the answers in one space, and that's really what ResearchMatch is trying to do. So, ResearchMatch and Neuropathy are asking all of you today who are interested in clinical trials, take a second, go to researchmatch.org, sign up, and register as a volunteer. It's our time now. We've got a chance to make a difference, and the Neuropathy Association would really like to do that. So according to the slides, we are going to answer your questions now. Most of your questions should be entered in the chat box because you are muted. So we'll take a second and look to see if there's anything going on in there. Feel free to take a second and type in your questions. Well, while you guys are thinking about it, Dr. Brannigan, is there anything else you would like to share in relation to either ResearchMatch or clinical trials?
Well, I think this whole process is very new, but we've actually here at Columbia are part of the consortium that are matched up to ResearchMatch. And we do have to get ResearchMatch approved by our institutional review board, but that has been done for some of our clinical trials. So we've started to go onto this to find patients for the studies that we're doing. And I think this is going to continue to grow.
Awesome. I think one of the questions out there is what institutions are currently using ResearchMatch, and I think that's a great question. So I mentioned that we have about 100 institutions using the system. Some of them are major academic medical centers like Columbia, where Dr. Brannigan is, or Vanderbilt, where I am. But we also have a number of health centers that are using ResearchMatch as well, and we have coverage in almost every state in the United States. Okay, one of the questions we got in the chat box is if I'm on a long list of medications, would that prevent me from being in a clinical trial? And the answer is not necessarily. Sometimes they're looking for your medications because they're trying to exclude a certain drugs that might have an interaction, or sometimes they're looking for people who are taking a specific medication because they want to see how people with that medication and that condition would perform in a trial. So no, nothing is absolutely exclusionary. Everything is dependent on the situation and the type of trial because each trial has different criteria. But that's a great question, so thank you for asking that. Another question was, I have not been diagnosed specifically with neuropathy. Do I need to have a physician diagnose me? I think I'll answer a little bit on that for ResearchMatch, and then Dr. Brannigan, if you want to answer from a clinician standpoint. From ResearchMatch, I don't think that it matters as much. You'll probably find that if you do get called up for a neuropathy trial, they'll want to confirm a diagnosis, but somebody on the clinical staff there should be able to confirm that diagnosis, so it's not, again, necessarily exclusionary.
Yeah, we often say that 20% of patients with peripheral neuropathy have idiopathic neuropathy, which I think is a type of neuropathy. It means that we haven't found diabetes or an autoimmune disease or an autoimmune deficiency or any defined cause of neuropathy. And I've actually done clinical trials for pain in these patients, and currently there's a PCORI grant looking at what the best treatment for pain is that's enrolling in this country. So I don't think that would be you would be potentially eligible for some types of clinical trials. Obviously not for a clinical trial for familial amyloidosis or diabetic neuropathy, but there are clinical trials for idiopathic neuropathy.
Okay, great. And I've asked my assistant Lauren here to help us with the chat box, so she's going to let us know what other questions are there.
Okay, are there trials active now in New York City area?
So there's a number of universities in New York City. So what we're doing at Columbia University right now is clinical trials for CIDP and clinical trials for transthyretin-phenyl amyloid. We're getting ready to take part in the patient-centered outcomes research study for idiopathic neuropathy that's centered at the University of Kansas. There are other universities in New York City that have different focuses. So I think that's the goal of ResearchMatch, to match people. There's also a website, clinicaltrials.gov, that lists clinical trials that are currently enrolling and often where the institutions are.
And also, I think it's worth pointing out that ResearchMatch has approximately 6 institutions in the NYC area. So we are connected to a number of people there. Also, clinicaltrials.gov is a great resource. It's a little daunting at times, but I think that it's also worth pointing out that a number of research studies in ResearchMatch are funded by the NIH, and some of them may not be listed on clinicaltrials.gov. So it's good to look in both places. You want to look as many places as you can.
Okay, can you join ResearchMatch if you are outside of the United States?
At present, you cannot. Unfortunately, right now, because of privacy laws in the U.S., we are limited to just domestic research options. But that's not to say we are not pushing to expand that in the future. So we are trying to get outside of our borders because we know that neuropathy is not limited by geography, as are many other conditions. So that is on our strategic goal to eventually go international.
What is the typical duration of a trial?
That's a great question.
I think it really, it varies by the condition. So many neuropathic pain studies currently run for 12 weeks. There are other treatment, there are sometimes clinical trials that are even of shorter duration. For some peripheral neuropathies where we're waiting for nerve regeneration to occur and be able to be measured, sometimes studies go for 1.5 or 2 or even 3 years. So it really varies greatly and depends on what outcomes we're looking for and what the disease is and how rapidly it progresses.
What about other diseases like diabetes? Does that stop one from participating in a trial?
Again,
so
go ahead.
I think you can go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I'm sure Dr. Brannigan's going to echo that there's some trials that are looking for disease or looking for multiple diseases. I know that diabetic neuropathy is a common diagnosis. I used to work in that field. So diabetes doesn't necessarily exclude you. It may limit you in the types of studies, but it's not going to be a major fallback. And Dr. Brannigan, feel free to expand on that.
Yeah. So this issue comes up with chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, which is a very distinct neuropathy from diabetic neuropathy. And when we're doing a clinical trial for CIDP, we don't want to be measuring diabetic neuropathy. So sometimes people with diabetes are excluded from the trials, but it's certainly possible for somebody with diabetes to have CIDP. So there's often slightly different definitions of the disease for somebody with diabetes to make sure that the neuropathy is truly from CIDP and not diabetes. That's just one example. But I think it's always worth exploring. Obviously, only people with diabetic neuropathy would be in diabetic neuropathy studies.
Okay, are there clinical trials that involve therapies or exercise that do not involve drugs?
Yes, there are. I think that is, I think, already true of some of the NIH-sponsored studies that are in the ResearchMatch, and there are studies of exercise, different types of diet, different types of intervention other than pharmaceutical agents. And there's also clinical trials of devices that are being done as well.
Also, I wanted to follow up on that there is a myriad of trial opportunities available in ResearchMatch that, like I said, we're disease neutral. We're also research type neutral. So as long as they're looking to engage with actual people, we do surveys, we do observational studies, we do alternative therapies. We also have drugs and devices, the traditional clinical trials. And again, that fact that I was talking about, that we have a lot of academic groups out there and we have a lot of people affiliated with NIH and other types of funding outside of pharma, means that we're going to get a lot more of that type of stuff than you might be able to find on clinicaltrials.gov as well. And that's not to say that we don't like clinicaltrials.gov. We are partnered with them. We love them. I'm just trying to say that there's a whole spectrum out there for everybody. I have a question down in my chat box about healthy volunteers. So yes, they're asking, can healthy volunteers participate in research too? And the answer to that is absolutely. So when Dr. Brannigan was talking at the beginning about controls and placebos and all those technical terms, there's a lot to do with drugs and devices with placebos and controls, but then there's also a lot to do with trying to figure out how a intervention or a drug will react in one person versus another. So sometimes they need to see how something will affect somebody who is not diagnosed with neuropathy versus somebody who is. So healthy people are always needed in research. We have about a 40% healthy volunteer population in ResearchMatch, and our current volunteer population is a total of 70,000. So we have a lot of healthy people out there who are engaged. I consider myself to be healthy, and I'm a volunteer.
Are travel expenses ever covered for a clinical trial?
Yes and no. So some studies yes, some studies no. We're trying to push as an industry in research, as a community, we are trying to push for more consideration of the expense of travel and how hard it is for people to take time off work and get parking, get childcare, all of that. So a lot of researchers have started to take notice of that, and they do offer some sort of compensation for that type of expense, but that will be dependent upon each individual trial. So that's a decision that's made outside of ResearchMatch's control. But again, I can say from somebody who's been in research for 10 years, that is definitely something that is being pushed to be addressed.
If we are in a clinical trial, can we still try other means of relief?
So go ahead, Dr. Brannigan.
When I'll answer that. So when I talked about the consent form, the consent form is an agreement of how the trial is set up, but it's always voluntary, and as time goes on, you can decide what is best for you within the trial. So, for example, some clinical trials for neuropathic pain have a mechanism for treating breakthrough pain. There's also often certain medications to obtain relief that are not allowed within the trial. So then it's kind of up to you and your doctors to decide what's best for you. You might not be able to participate in the trial. Some treatments for neuropathy, where we're really primarily looking at signs of the neuropathy recovering as far as strength and function coming back, we allow patients to remain on medicines for nerve pain, whatever works best for them. So it's really very trial dependent, but it also, if you decide to enter a clinical trial and you and your doctors decide it's best for you to do something outside of the protocol, you're not obligated to stay within the clinical trial if it's not in your best interest as time goes on.
Thank you guys. These are all really great questions. We are just trying to screen through some of them and make sure we get as many answers as possible.
Okay, is there any research being done on patients that have both peripheral and autonomic neuropathy?
Well, one example is transthyretin familial amyloid, which is a neuropathy that involves the peripheral nerves, including the autonomic nerves. There is also an NIH-sponsored study for a particular type of autoimmune autonomic neuropathy, and there are others as well.
Okay, is stem cell research being considered for neuropathy?
I mean, stem cells mean different things to different people. So I think the hope at one time would be there would be stem cells that could regenerate to take the place of the nerve function for damaged nerves, and that is certainly being considered and worked on. And to my knowledge, I'm pretty certain that's not actually being done in people now. The other thing that is done is bone marrow transplants with stem cell transplant. So that is a way to treat certain types of autoimmune neuropathies, and then to be able to do stem cell replacement for the bone marrow cells that make blood cells when they're treated with chemotherapy drugs. And that is actually being done for some types of autoimmune neuropathies.
One of the questions I just saw in the box was whether or not travel is absolutely required, and the answer to that question is not always. So the fact that we've tried to expand our network as far as we can across the country, and we're growing more every day, is that we want to be able to get connected closer to home so that travel isn't a big of an issue. So depending on where you live, travel may not be an issue at all. You may just be as simple as going to the closest hospital, but for others there might be a little more travel. So again, it's a variable based on where you are in the system.
Would I have to stop using current treatments like Lyrica?
So I think that really depends very much on the clinical trial. So like some of the clinical trials that we're doing where we're treating for a specific type of neuropathy and trying to give a treatment that will allow the nerves to recover, we're primarily measuring the strength and the function and the sensory loss, and patients can continue to take Lyrica. There are, though, if you were going to enter a clinical trial for a nerve pain medicine, some clinical trials will allow you to stay on the medicine you're on and see if there can be added benefit, but some clinical trials for nerve pain agents actually have people wash out or stop the nerve pain medicine, such as Lyrica, and then get randomized to the new agent that's being studied. So it really varies on the particular clinical trial and the type of the goals of the clinical trial.
All right. I just noticed one in the inbox that says, if a volunteer needs diagnostics to further define their neuropathy, is there a cost involved? So I'll go ahead and answer that. So in terms of cost of medical procedures for clinical trials, anything that is related to the protocol, so the little plan of treatment and testing that Dr. Brannigan talked about at the beginning of this, all of those services are provided or paid for by the study sponsor. So sometimes it's a pharmaceutical company, sometimes that's the NIH, sometimes it's the organization itself. Vanderbilt does a lot of self-funded research. But if it's something that is part of your normal standard of care, meaning that you would get it whether or not you were in the clinical trial or not, that is still billable to research under Medicare law. Billable to insurance under Medicare law, sorry. So if you needed additional testing and that was something that was required by the protocol, that they needed to confirm a diagnosis by a certain mechanism, then yes, that would be covered by the protocol. But if it was you needed further testing as a matter of just figuring out what your course of care is, that doesn't necessarily fit into the same category, and that would be billable as regular standard of care. Another question that's come in is, how long is my information kept in the registry? If I don't hear something in the near term, could I be contacted at a later date? So that's a two-part question. Your information is kept in the registry for as long as you want it to be in the registry. If you remember when I was kind of fumbling around through the registration and your volunteer dashboard, if you go to update my info, there is a button right there that says remove me. And if you click that button and you confirm, yes, I do in fact want to be removed from this program, all of your information will be deleted. That only caveat with that is if you have previously released your contact information to somebody at Columbia or NYU or Arizona State, wherever you may have said, yes, hey, contact me, that institution will have your data and because you've already released it and we can't control that. But anything that we have in our system will be deleted and no future contacts or releases will occur. It says, if I don't hear something in the near term, could I be contacted at a later date? Yes. So we have been around for about 5 years. We have volunteers who've been with us since day one. A lot of them, it took a little while as we built up the network to get researchers in their area to get them a match. And so as we add more institutions and we add more researchers and more people get excited about research and we put more investment in it, the more matches will probably be coming down the road. So if you don't get contacted right away, don't get discouraged. We do have a stat that says about 98% of our volunteers have been contacted at least once to participate in something. Whether or not that something was what they were interested in, we can't measure, but you will start to get some communication.
Okay, this question kind of deals with that one as well. If I say no to one study, will I still be contacted in the future?
Absolutely. So as long as you're still in the database, you can say no to as many studies as you want. Not every study that you get offered is going to be something you're interested in. And the reason why we give you that option to say yes or say no is because we want you to feel comfortable releasing your information. We want you to feel comfortable in participating. And if you're not there, you're not there. So we're not going to force you to say yes in order to keep you in the database. That doesn't make you a bad volunteer. So we still appreciate your time. We appreciate the fact that you're willing to be part of it, and we'll stick with you as long as you stick with us. So until you actually go in and say, remove me, you will always be considered for any studies that come your way.
Are there trials for both large and small fiber neuropathy and people who have both?
Yes, there are. So I think the majority of patients that have both large and small fibers involved in their neuropathy, but there are people with exclusively one versus the other, and there are some clinical trials for idiopathic small fiber neuropathy that have been done through the years, as well as small and large fiber neuropathies from various causes.
Okay, just to let everybody know, we got about 5 minutes left of open mic questions, and then we will move over to Facebook to answer additional questions there. So feel free to get in your last minute questions. I'll answer this one. So one of you has asked, if you're on a successful drug trial, will you be allowed to continue it until drug release? That is up to the FDA and be the sponsor. So some studies have what they call compassionate care or extended open label. And if there's been an efficacy in a certain type of drug, so breakthrough therapies for cancer and treatments in that area have some provision around letting people stay on drugs if they're proven to be effective and life-saving. Other drugs, unfortunately, you have to wait until it's approved. But again, that will vary by the type of trial you're in. Kind of related, but we have another question that's come in that says, will this webinar be available in full as I missed the first part? And the answer to that is yes. We are recording this, and it will be displayed on the Neuropathy website at a later date, and they will let you know when that happens. Okay, we have time for maybe 2 more questions if there's anybody still out there that has a question they want answered. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. We definitely are glad that you were here. Your questions were quite valuable, and hopefully we've given you some information that you are excited about. So we invite you to continue with us and join our Facebook chat. And it's not actually now. It'll start at, I believe, 3:45 Eastern. Go to the Neuropathy Association Facebook page, and you'll see the conversation pop up, and feel free to continue to comment there. Also, you can go ahead and visit ResearchMatch.org in the downtime. Take a look around. You don't have to sign up. You can just kind of see what's going on. And feel free to follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook. We are constantly promoting information that may be of use to our volunteers there as well. In addition, the first 4 people to like the RM Facebook page will get a prize. We have RM mug, but that may not be the prize because I think we actually just gave the last one of those away, but we will get you something to show you how much we appreciate your taking the time to like us. All right.
I'd also like to thank everybody for their interest and participation and interesting questions. Thank you, and have a good afternoon. But we'll hear from you on Facebook as well.